I recently flew down to Vegas to be able to sit down with the founder of Katalyst, Bjoern Woltermann. His EMS suit has changed my life. This is the first of many interviews to help myself and my viewers really understand the impact that Katalyst will have on them and the US in general. It's my first ever interview, so please be patient with me. I hope you guys enjoy. Welcome, guys. So I have with me Bjoern Woltermann. He's the founder of Katalyst, and I'm just curious, you are the reason that I actually ended up buying the suit, watching your interviews with people. And I kind of wanted to be able to sit down with you to answer a lot of questions that I haven't been, answered yet. And then also to give kind of my viewers the inside on what I saw in you, the honesty, the excitement about your product and some of that kind of stuff. So what originally got you kind of into EMS in general?
Yeah. Thanks, Austin, for having me. Absolutely. So back in Germany, about now 12 years ago, I had a busy job where I basically spent 150 days a year on a plane, pretty much. Mm-hmm. And was in tech, was building products, flew all around the world. I was a runner. And as a runner, you do cardio a lot and generally not into strength. I had a former lower back injury when I was 20, and that basically came back. And I wasn't strong enough in my lower back, and I was in pain constantly. I was on painkillers 20 days a month. And it wasn't good. And it was, for context, I was 35 at the time, and I had issues you shouldn't have at that age. And my physician said, you either going to end up with a herniated disc very soon, or you're going to quit your job, stop sitting in planes all the time, or you have to massively strengthen your core and, build muscle so that your joints and ligaments, and especially the 3 discs that are very narrow in my lower spine, are not pinching, and you can actually hold your body weight and everything that life throws at you with your muscles instead of your joints and ligaments.
Right.
And I said, what I'm supposed to do? How should I do that? And he said, there's the studio that I go twice a week. And it's amazing. And you're in the suit and you're sweating and you're sore for a few days afterwards. And I was like, what are you talking about? And for context, my physician at the time, he was decently in shape, but he wasn't a gym guy. And I was like, okay, maybe it works. And then he said, and by the way, Bjoern, the best thing is it's just 20 minutes. And I was like, okay, now you totally lost me. It's just like, gimmick, it's too good to be true. Like, you totally lost me. He said, no, please do me a favor and give it a shot. And I did. And I went, and I saw these 2 individuals through a window. Like, there was this white studio, very clean, very nice. 2 individuals, like a mid-30s male and a 60-year-old-ish female in a black suit, wires everywhere, looked like a bomb vest, printer cable to like a big device, and a personal trainer. And they were moving their arms with nothing in it, and they were sweating and dripping. Doesn't make any sense what I'm seeing here. Mm-hmm. Why is it hard to slowly move without anything in your hands? Why is it difficult? Right. Yeah, and then went inside, and one of the trainers there explained to me what they're doing. They're doing full-body electromuscle stimulation training. And they had a lot of brand terms back in the days, and they didn't actually call it. We do EMS training, they said. We do full-body EMS, and it's called Body Street, and here's how it works. And you basically show up, and 5 minutes you change into the suit, and then you do a workout for 20 minutes, and then we basically get you out of the suit and you're done. I'm like, okay. So can I try this? And I said, yeah, next week. I'm like, what? Yeah, sorry, we're booked. It doesn't work. Mm-hmm. I was like, what? And so I made an appointment the next week. Mondays, I was generally in town. It was my non-travel day with my local team in Berlin. So I showed up 5:30. I think the first time was 5:30. And got into the suit, and 3 minutes in, I was like, what is this? It's just you're fully on, your body is on, and you're
you can't ignore it at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Right. You're like, what? It's and in one way, it's a foreign feeling, but another way, it's you feel very alive. That's what I felt. So I thought it was oh, like this and that. So, a lot is going on in your body, but it is.
So is the trainer constantly adjusting things at that point?
So these devices, and they still exist and they're still being sold, it's like they are very manual. So it's a little bit like the first way to make music were just instruments, right? So I think you have a piano. And to get music, and good music especially, out of a piano, you need a talented artist who knows what he's doing.
Totally.
Right? You need someone who can play the piano. And these trainers basically had to play these devices, which had like 12 whatever knobs on them, and each muscle group, and it's all manual. So now it's all manual, and he kind of has to guess.
Right, because there's, unless it's audio feedback from you.
Yeah. Maybe that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Or
but
more or
where's
less.
the ooh coming from?
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. More or less, or whatever. Exactly. So, so you're constantly basically discussing with the trainer what, where, what, so on and so forth. They had chip cards. Like, you remember the one remember, the
old.
Yeah. They
the
still
holes in
exist.
them.
Yeah. With the no chip, like with a SIM card on it, like the big SIM cards, like the original SIM cards.
Yes.
My first phone had a SIM card the size of a credit card, right? So that was the first, And so they had one of these cards that you basically plug in there, and you're getting
that
your
kind
settings.
of stored your ongoing settings.
Yes, exactly.
Kind of like Katalyst does, but
like
very, very first
version, So for the first 3, 4, 5 minutes, you're basically spending adjusting stuff. And then they had a poster on the wall. And on this poster were 18, 19, something like this, exercises. And the trainer was kind of like, oh, we're going to do this next. And we're going to do this next. So they basically, that's how their franchise works, basically. Totally. That's how their programming basically works. And they always do the same 19 exercises, and that's it. in different orders. And I was like, whoa. Of course, I started sweat, it became harder and harder. And it was over. And I was like, what? This was it? It's like, because it's so fast. And I went home, told my wife about it, had dinner, all that. And 2 days later, I was so sore. I had really hard time moving, sitting up, sitting down, your glutes hurt. And I was like, wow, I haven't felt like this probably ever from standing in 20 minutes.
Right. You felt like that in parts of your body.
Yes.
But not the entire body.
Yes.
At the same time.
So when you go to the gym and you spend hour, 2 hours in the gym, you're working on certain muscle groups, and then some of them you hit really well, and then you have the soreness, but not this all over, all inclusive, whatever experience. And I was like, whatever you did, you remembered, okay, there was something. And that was really fascinating. So I gave him a call. I said, I'm gonna give it a try. So every Monday at 6 p.m. I had a fixed booking. Monday was my non-travel day. I could fit it into my calendar, and left at 5:30 from the office. At 6 I was there. Got into it. 6:30 I was out. It was walkable from my home, from our condo, and
so you could almost even warm up on the way to some degree.
No. So I basically went from I drove most of the time. I drove from the office, parked my car in our underground parking, walked over to the studio, and then just walked home. It was 3 minutes walk or 5 minutes walk from our house. It was very easy. And in general, Europe has very walkable cities. Which in the US is you have walkable cities like New York or some areas of Chicago or Seattle or whatsoever. Your neighborhoods are walkable. But then, for example, here in Vegas where we are, it's you need a car. It's everything is 2-3 miles away, right away.
Something Vegas has is space.
Space, yes, we have space, right. This is why we're also booming and getting a lot of people in here. It's a lot of people want to come to Vegas. It's quite interesting. Yeah, so I did this every Monday. And 6 weeks later, and that was literally a miracle to me, 6 weeks later, I woke up on a Sunday morning. And so normally when I woke up, I had made this interesting roll out of bed, a sideways roll, because I couldn't sit up because my back hurt. So I did the sideways roll normally. And I remembered like that week was actually, things were like different. And then on Sunday, I told my wife, like, I haven't taken a pill in a week. And I'm not rolling weirdly out of my bed. And
which is eye-opening. I've been there.
I mean, I've spent 3 hours in the gym. That's literally what it is. Like in 6 weeks, like
right.
I spent 3 hours in the gym. And that for me was really, really, really amazing. So kept doing this. My wife became a customer for different reasons, for aesthetic reasons. Mm-hmm. She said, like, everything is a bit firmer, everything is a bit nicer, and, different training goals, but amazing results. And then often we'd train side by side on Mondays and cursed at each other. And she said, like,
pushed each other.
Yeah. Right. And then she asked the trainer to put it up on me, and then whatever. It's like, it became this interesting training experience. And that year, my wife and I were visiting friends in LA. We were sitting in Beverly Hills with friends at a barbecue, and the girls started talking about fitness. And I think Zumba was a thing back in the days.
Yep.
And my wife said, we do this thing in this black suit, and it's like, everything is firmer and everything is nicer, and it takes half an hour in, out. And everybody else is looking at her, what are you talking about?
Absolutely.
And then I look over and I'm like, you don't have this here? Like, I'm sitting in, Beverly Hills, right?
Right.
So I'm going to not have you beep this out, but I'm sitting in Beverly Hills. And you guys invent all this stuff.
Right.
So the moment where I realized it's not US originated was mind-blowing for me, because as a European, basically everything fitness comes from the US. Mm-hmm. Minus kettlebells, which the Russians invented.
Right.
Martial arts, different. But in fitness, is it cycling or CrossFit or Zumba or any aerobics or any running classes, all apps, everything programming is all US based. Mm-hmm.
Well, especially in California.
Yes, yes. And seeing no one had a clue on this side of the pond was absolutely mind-blowing for me, because I spent a lot of time. So in my job that I had at the time, I was basically sourcing new technologies to introduce them into Europe. So it was basically flying to the West Coast and to the East Coast and to Israel, and spent a lot of time in these three places finding new companies to basically bring modern technologies into Europe. And then I'm sitting there and I realized that probably the most advanced thing in health and wellness is not from the US, and they don't even have it. It was the inverse.
Right.
And for context, I didn't want to do corporate anymore. I knew that at the time. And video conferencing is interesting, and collaboration and cybersecurity and whatever, but it didn't really fulfill me.
Right. Well, you kind of wanted something new, something.
Yeah, but also something that is more human.
Right.
Communication is human. I get it, right? But the telcos were not necessarily the places that really drove innovation in communication, right? It was, back in the days, it was Skype. We remember it.
Right.
Before Microsoft bought it and it vanished.
Right.
I wanted to do something new and just dove into it, did all the research, and like, is this real? Like, does this work? Where is it from? Like, who did this? Like, where's the company from? And a few months later, there's a large fitness conference in Germany called FIBO. It's like probably the largest fitness conference in the world. It's like URSA on steroids. Okay. It's like, because URSA is very US based, and then FIBO is like very international. It's like, everybody's going there.
Okay.
And my wife and I said, hey, let's drive to Cologne over the weekend. Let's visit some friends and let's go to this show. And we were blown away by the size of this thing. It's like absolutely massive. It's crazy. I think it's like 200,000 people come there over 3 days. And it has like 2 days for industry only, and then 2 days which public. So at the time we were public, so we went to the public days. And I wanted to talk to the company that made the equipment for the studio that I went to. Cool. Found them. Pretty big, decent at the time. And then I saw there was another company, and there was a third company doing this technology. And I was like, And started
And did they all run the setup the same where they had studios?
Pretty much,
okay.
yes. Yeah. So at the time, and still to some extent, the technology outside of Katalyst pretty much is pianos. You need an artist to play the music.
Yes, I would agree with that, yeah.
And they're now, like 10 years later, like there are different iterations of that, and maybe it has an iPad, maybe it doesn't, whatsoever, but you're still playing DJ and you're still having to do all this. Which we come back later, which is like experience design and product design and like how do you build something that's actually usable. Basically, all of them are building different versions of pianos. Some of them are red, some of them are blue.
Which is funny to hear you say from a standpoint that, you know, this is a order of magnitude, double, two orders of magnitude from weightlifting just to get to EMS.
Yes.
Right? And then Katalyst is almost another order of magnitude in usability.
Yes. So in fitness, maybe we take a step back, and this is what I saw. So I look at the world with the eyes of a behavioral economist. So I have an economics master's, and my specialties are like game theory and behavioral.
Okay.
Right? So basically human behavior at scale. What works? How do you negotiate? Like all these things, right? So, and human behavior generally changes when technology makes things easier. So all the progress that we've done in the last thousands of years is basically, we made fire. Great, cool. Warm is better.
Right.
Especially in winter.
Right.
Cooked food is better.
Right, easier than...
Right, easier.
Exactly.
Right. And then we built cars. First we built carriages, great, getting from A to B. And then we built cars, like cool, I don't have to feed it.
Right.
And then the car made it easier to get to a different city or a different state, or the plane made it easier to get to a different continent. So the phone made it easier to communicate, or now book food or whatever you want to do, get food.
Right.
So technology has generally transformational or societal impact when it makes things easier. In fitness, we've never done that. We're still lifting weights.
Well, and couple that with almost an intent to confuse in the industry. Like, it's so hard to figure out what to eat. It's hard to figure out how to get the most gains in the gym. I mean, you almost have to have a physical education degree to really understand how to get the best out of the gym, for instance.
Yeah. Yes. However, I would caveat one of the things you said. I always assume good intentions, so I don't think that anyone in the gym wants to confuse someone.
Oh, right.
Right. In the gym, that's not the case. With food, that's a different topic, but it's probably a different episode to also do this, because food is a completely different animal.
Yeah.
Totally. So we're still lifting weights. We're still running for extended periods of time, and if we want to increase sprinting, like I think the most technology we have is like we sprint with a rubber band or with a parachute behind us. Like if you really want to do the 40 dash, like, you know, we haven't really seen innovation in fitness. And now people tell me, wait a minute, there's so much tech in fitness. Yes, there is, right? There are all these like trackers and TV screens and iPads and treadmills and all this kind of stuff. But most of the technology is motivators or are motivators.
Yes.
They're not making it easier. And in behavior science, what you have two axes. You have a motivation axis and you have an ability axis. So people do something if it's easy for them or if they are highly motivated.
Right.
So if something is very hard for me, but I'm highly motivated, I'm going to do it.
Right.
So for example, people that unfortunately for some reason have never made it into a healthy, happy lifestyle only start working out after they get the diagnosis of they need a stents in their heart, or they get cancer or whatever.
Through the roof.
Right. Yes. Different topic on top
Right.
of that. Right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But let's say they had a heart attack and they basically get told, like, if you continue like this, then you're going to not survive the next one or something like this, right? So the motivation has to be extremely high to do something hard, or it is easy. So for example, as we're young and we have time, we have no commitments, we're physically able, working out, running outside. Kids run all the time, like, see adults run rarely, right? So, so in fitness, where we failed the people is to make it more accessible and easier. We've done this with communication, we've done this with transportation, we've done this with entertainment, we've done this with all these things. In fitness, we have not done this. In fitness, we are building technologies that motivate you to do the same thing.
Almost like reintroduction in marketing. Like we've reintroduced running.
Yes.
By different treadmills and then curved treadmills.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And we added competitiveness to weightlifting called CrossFit or like other things, right? Which I think is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And it's great. But unfortunately, it works for a fraction of the population.
Right. And you have to, there's a decent amount of time investment in that. At least from my perspective, right? Because, with my kids, right? And I don't work when I have my kids because I want to spend as much time as I can with them. It's like, how do you keep a consistent gym schedule?
Hard. It's very hard.
Right.
It's very hard. In fitness or in health and fitness, the only way to reach the masses is making it easier.
Right.
It's the same rule as if you want to get people to travel, you have to make it easier.
Right. Right.
So the question is, how do you do that? So it's not enough to motivate you and tell you afterwards how you did. It's important, and it helps people understand what they should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's too hard in the first place, they're not even going to start.
Right.
Let's take running. You just used running as an example. The first runner high is at least 6 months away.
You got to get to that point, right?
Who's staying 6 months on a thing that's like super hard and then like, ugh.
And without routine. See, one of my big problems is, you have routine and you do it, and then all of a sudden something happens and it breaks the routine.
Yeah.
It's hard to continue at that point.
I mean, one of the groups, and here's the other aspect why I was really excited about this. I care about people. I really do. I really want to help people. Like when something happens, it's like, just from the, corner of my eye, whatsoever, I get involved because like people, I just, they're just interesting stories. We were like walking Seattle at night, and I just like had I just looked into an alleyway, which was on the other side of the road, like big road, like four lane road. Looked at the other side, and a car backed out into the alleyway. And I said, she has a flat tire. I just looked out of my wife's like, what? It's like, and I was like with a friend, and I walked over, and I didn't want to have her go out like this. And like, first of all, she's going to be more trouble, and she gets on the freeway, and like, she hurts her rim or whatever, gets in a car accident, whatever.
Big
right?
deal. Right.
Cool. So I went over there, and I also realized it's dark alley at night. There's a woman in a car, and a man is knocking on her window. Not a good idea. So, So I went and I said, like, please stop. And I took my phone. I took a picture of her wheel and just showed her wheel. So it's not I'm faking something to let her open the door whatsoever. It's like, I said, ma'am, you have a flat tire. Do you want help? And she was looking at me like, so it's not just helping, it's also how you're helping. Like, are you first creating stress or not? Like, is this first a threat for her or not? So really care. And seeing a glimpse of a technology that has the potential to really help people at scale was what absolutely fascinated me. And after I did my research and figured out that the science really holds up, because we've been using it for physiotherapy for 60 years when a muscle is injured.
Right.
So the question that I asked myself is, okay, people ask you, is this safe? Okay, so for context, for 60 years, your physician prescribes you this when your muscle is injured to rehabilitate it.
Right. In possibly the worst possible scenario when you would
exactly.
Right.
Yeah, I would say that's okay, right? So
exactly.
I would say this: A works and B is safe, because if not, we would know by now.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Right? Because that's the thing. It's like if something is new, and we had a mass experiment a few years ago, right? If something is new, we're going to find out years after.
Right. Right.
Right? This has been around for 60 years.
Right.
So we know what it does and we know what it doesn't do, right? So for example, and I saw one of your questions, and we can go back there later. It's like, is this a fat loss thing? It's like, not necessarily. So we're not claiming that, right? So we know what it does and we know what it doesn't do. So it doesn't burn fat from your abs because you use an ab belt. Like, that's bullshit.
Right.
Sorry.
Right.
That's
You can't isolate fat loss, for sure.
So helping people was an opportunity and to some degree a duty. Because if you find something and you're not doing anything with it, then...
That's exactly how I felt about my channel.
Really?
Yep. That's why I started the channel 3 weeks after I got the suit.
Beautiful.
Because I'm like, people need to know.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And I mean, you came in a time when we didn't have supply yet, but it's totally fine. But like, yes, it was probably the same reason and the same urge. And I said, yeah. So made a plan, figure out, what to do. First, I actually gave all the other manufacturers a call. And again, let's do this together.
Yeah, right.
I was reaching out, and the first one was like...
Don't need to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah. And I was like, I'm going to help you get to the US, and I'm going to get the franchise for 10 years, or the license for 10 years. I'm fine. Totally. I had a job. I had a good job. Like, yes, I was gone a lot, but I liked it. And basically all of them were either we don't speak English, or we are busy anyway, or we're not going to the US because if you spill coffee over someone's hand, you're going to get sued to death. So this is like how Europeans see America.
It's how some Americans see America. But yes, I mean, it's a litigious society, right?
Yeah. And then you get crazy amounts that you have to pay for whatever.
Right.
So I found out there are no partners. So I have to build it. Made a plan and started a short 10-year overnight journey. Yes, definitely.
So, when you basically decided to start your own thing, was the integrating it with an app kind of part of the plan from the beginning? So in 2013, so a year later, when I was doing my research, I bought a device. So I learned how to use these, bought a device myself. They're like 20 grand or something like this. Yeah. And put it in a suitcase. And on one of my LA trips, I took it over to LA. And I remember there was through a friend, I got a room at the Beverly Wilshire, which was in the area where a lot of my people that I knew were working. And I invited them over. I said, hey, come for an hour. I'm going to show you something. And then I gave him a workout and I gave him a questionnaire. Product testing.
Yes, with a customer.
Right.
Will Americans like this? Because for context, at that time, my research showed we had already 500 personal training studios in Germany, which is the size of California.
Yeah, decent. Yeah, right.
Massive. Yes. Will Americans like this? Because for context, the studio versions, you share a suit with someone. There's a rental suit. It's
right. Well, and who can afford 20 grand?
You don't have to buy it.
No, I'm just meaning
yeah. Okay. Yeah. If you want your own. Yeah. Totally. 100%. Yes. And that doesn't work. And by the way, to keep the analogy of the piano, it's very hard to play the piano and dance at the same time. Absolutely. So if you want to have a good training, you need to be focusing on your body. You don't have to be focusing on making adjustments.
It's hard enough to move at the higher levels just without anything else to think about.
And we made 2 big buttons for that. Literally, it's like that.
Exactly.
That's literally
Absolutely.
So I did product testing with some friends, and then there was someone else in Newport Beach who said oh yeah, I'd love to see it. And he had been in marketing at big companies for a long time, so I wanted his perspective. And the consistent feedback was, love the workout, I want my own suit, and I want to do it at home. This was before Peloton launched. So long term, it was clear that that was the, let's say, ideal customer experience. But coming back from an economic standpoint, why is Netflix so much bigger than
Redbox,
Cinestar?
right?
No, cinemas,
Right.
because it's in people's homes.
Right.
So you only get usage in a distributed model. And if I'm on a farm in Kansas and I want to get healthier, or I want to supplement my hard work as a farmer with a good workout, there is no studio around.
Right.
So in a world where I want to design a product where I don't leave anyone behind, we leave no man behind here, it has to be shippable and you have to be able to do it wherever you are. So ultimately that was the goal. Was it achievable in step one? No, because first of all, we had to learn all this.
Right.
So we had to learn how to build this. I mean, the science wasn't really hard. There's a Italian physician who in the 90s early 2000s wrote the most comprehensive dossier about electromuscular stimulation training.
Oh, interesting. I'll have to get that from you at some point.
Proschetti is his name. It's very old, but they did training plans for all kinds of stuff.
Cool.
Literally and we basically went and said okay, so if he thinks these are the ideal parameters, let's build it to that. So we literally read everything and went deep into the science, built our first generation device. But in the United States, and this is why the US is about 10, 15 years behind Europe, is powered muscle stimulators are a medical device classification. The rest of the world is the same as a blow dryer or electric toothbrush. It's a device with a battery, but it doesn't kill you.
Right. Right.
But in the US, the marketeers went a little bit overboard with the app belts. So one of the things that the FDA often does is they regulate the claims you can make rather than the device. So when you get rock hard abs from a watch battery and it lasts half a year, not really.
Right.
Not really. So here we had to overcome that and we had to get FDA clearance.
Well, on top of that, you had to market over all of those false promises, from my perspective, right? Because I always saw, ab belts, yes, they might work. I mean, I remember seeing Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, right? And he's doing the ab belt.
I think he's doing it. I think in Dragon, he's doing it on the chest.
On the chest, yeah.
And this actually worked, what he did. It was Russian stim. And it was actually a powerful device. And it actually worked. So this is what...
And why did it never flesh out? Because he was in the US when he was doing it.
Yeah, totally. I don't know. I wasn't here at the time.
Right, yeah.
And the science worked, and it's called Russian stim because the Russian athletes literally used it in the 70s and then came up with it. And Russian stim is basically still a sine curve that's the same that comes out of your socket. Down.
Oh, so it was
it was not that powerful, but what I'm saying is the first, and this is probably another episode on top of it, the first signal modulation that they used was basically just a sine curve, sine wave.
Right.
And has a lot of, how would I say, downsides using it this way, because
not tailored to the muscle.
Yes, exactly. It's not really tailored to what you're trying to do, and only over the years people found out okay, what should the signal look like? It's a little bit like the first, the first bell that someone designed was probably just loud but not pleasant, and then they had to figure out how do I have to shape a bell?
And then have to figure out how.
Yeah. So, but the first thing is a prescription device that you get. When something comes new into the medical field, it's always prescription only from a physician, so under the supervision of a physician. And or a trained professional, could be a nurse or something like that, right? So new medications, therapies are always prescription only. So we started prescription only, and which means a trainer is operating the device. So we basically replicated what was standard in Europe, but we added two things. We made it wireless right away. I don't want to be tethered with a printer cable. It was literally a printer cable, like DSAP25 printer cable. So I don't want to be tethered to a device so that it can move freely. And the second thing we added, and we added this shortly after, was a data collection aspect. So it was a quantified device. So instead of, the trainers were still making the adjustments, but we recorded everything. And with that data set, we opened 3 pop-up studios, also tested different locations in the Seattle region. One was in a shopping mall, one was in a residential district, one was in a more city center where a lot of offices were around. Like what works from a location perspective, because we also didn't know by when would we have the ability to go to a home mod. So for now, economically as a business, studio had to work. So we did that.
And essentially proof of concept at that point too. I mean,
yeah, and
proving the market, proving the suit.
Yes, but we also were learning. We wanted to learn, for example, females in a certain age range, what are intensities that they're working out at? Males, what are intensities that they're just working out at? What matters? Like, what does the pulse width matter versus the amplitude of the thing? Like, whatsoever. Like, so how are people actually giving feedback to the trainer?
Absolutely.
And we recorded 13,000 training sessions. And then with that data, I sifted through it and I was like, end of 18, I went to Kauai with my wife for a week. It was the first time I took holidays in 2 years. And on the plane, I had like 6 hours, literally, and my wife was watching something else. And when I landed, I think I got it. I think I know what we have to build. And we had enough data, so that all worked. But the thing that was my breakthrough personally was, what makes an EMS experience a good experience? And in the studio, we had four aspects, or actors, or players, or ingredients. So you have the trainer, you have the technology, you have the customer, and you have the room. And now you can go and say like, okay, so the room does lighting, the room does music, the room makes sure there's no obstacles, right? That's the room. Changing, the room has to be designed in a way that's private enough so that people can change, all these things that play the role. And the trainer in the studio example is like making all the decisions, more or less has to make the guesswork or the judgment call, is counting 4, 3, 2, 1, here we go, and we do 6, and we do 5, and we do 4, and then they always get it wrong because I always, when I count backwards, like how when you count back, when you call your push-ups, it's like, And so they do that. They decide what's the next exercise. But they actually follow the clock of the device, because the clock on-off 4 seconds is actually the device. So there is the device is leading the trainer on timing. The trainer is leading the device on intensity. Is making
extra steps that don't need to be there.
Ton of stuff there. So that the customer can just focus on himself.
Absolutely. I mean, that totally makes sense trainer-wise.
Yes. So, okay, that was my first column. So I had all these things that the different four actors basically are doing. And then I said, in a home environment, how would I build up these 4 different groups? I don't know the location, but it's most likely private. So I don't have privacy issues with windows.
It's as private as the user wants it to be.
Exactly. Right? They can do it outside, or can do it on a rooftop or whatsoever, and can do it in a hotel lobby if you want to, fine. But most likely it's private. They have changing rooms, they have showers, like great. No problem. There's no trainer. Okay. So now, how do I basically solve the equation? And my goal was, I don't want the customer to have more duties than before.
Right.
So that they can still focus on themselves. So only things can improve. So for example, the constant feedback and talking to a person should go away. Because
basically going back to first principle of design.
Absolutely.
Right.
First principle thinking is like, I think, one of the only things that really advance us as humans.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's a controversial thing these days to say, but if you can't root it in science, if you can't root it in physics and mechanics and whatsoever, it's not going to happen. I mean, I can wish that this bottle is levitating. It's not going to happen.
Right.
Right? Because just I want...
And iteration is a lot easier than kind of redesign from the ground up.
Yes. But you have to first... And this was this model that I created for myself of these like 4 different pieces. Like then I knew what I had to redistribute.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, I gave all these duties to the technology. So I had to find ways how with technology I can solve all 4 of these things. So no counting. Okay, so the countdown has to be on the screen. The exercise has to be on the screen. Someone has to tell me what to do. Okay, there needs to be a trainer on the screen. Can't just be an avatar. The person technically has to talk to me.
Right.
So if it's just an avatar, it's not going to work, right? There needs to be motivational aspects to it. An avatar doesn't do that. Just because there's an avatar, fine, who cares?
Right.
Yeah. So there needed to be training content. Mm-hmm. And Peloton paved the way and so on and so forth. Totally fine. But even if I have content and I still, as the customer, have to control the device, it doesn't work.
Right.
Because I'm busy with myself. I'm just busy doing my exercises and getting good form and so on and so forth. So those were the design principles to actually go through the different aspects. And actually at the beginning, and ultimately it led to I have 14 patents on this device. Interaction, hardware, software, other aspects. So initially, all got solved, but one thing. How do I increase the intensity over the time of the workout? Because constantly going forward and hitting 1+, mm-hmm. roughly what we learned is in EMS training, you start with a certain intensity, and then during the 20 minutes, you roughly double it.
Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah.
You roughly double it.
I see that.
And the way this also works is you have the fine motor skill movements at the beginning where your load cannot be so high, and then you have the big movements later in the workout.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, I never noticed that, but you're absolutely right.
There's so much intention in small things that we don't talk actually about, but we have to tell the story more and more.
That's why we're here.
Yes,
absolutely.
Definitely. And there are so many more things. But that's roughly how it goes. So you have, let's say, the big squats you have generally at the end, mm-hmm. right? And the boxing you have at the beginning.
Yeah, and they kind of ramp up mm-hmm. at the end too.
Yeah, exactly.
Like a burnout.
So, but going 40 times during and hitting go and plus and whatsoever, which the trainer actually, while they were operating this, they constantly mm-hmm. increased this. This was not on a ramp. This was someone was just increasing the volume of the stereo system, mm-hmm. so to say.
So I assume that's more mind-muscle connection. Your mind-muscle connection increases over the workout, I would say. Do you say
you could technically have the same intensity across a workout? You mm-hmm. could. But generally there's well,
I noticed that mine builds.
Oh, yes.
Over the course of the workout.
It does.
I can...
They all do.
Almost freeze up at 180 in the beginning, and then 280 is too easy later.
Exactly, because you're first of all, you're warming up, but also this freeze up is a mental thing. It's not a physical
mm-hmm.
thing.
Absolutely.
So you're okay, I can fight against this. Okay, now you won against 180, and now you won against 190, and you won against this. So you're learning. You're also learning physical and psychological resilience through that. Mm-hmm. It's I'm overcoming this. Right.
Absolutely.
Some people at the beginning are I'm locking up.
Yeah.
No, you're not. You can move against this.
You have to work through that.
Exactly.
Almost an emotional barrier.
Yeah,
right.
Totally. Yes.
Right.
And it's as it is as much mental as it is physical. So at the beginning, I didn't have a concept and didn't have an answer to have a good experience through the ramp of the 20 minutes.
What I notice is I want to get into it really fast. So I ramp up and then I try to let the trainer do it. But because I'm ramping so fast in the beginning, I almost have to just take trainer adjustments out for a while.
Absolutely. Right. And I'm currently working with a team on a second gen concept of how to adjust intensities. It's going to get much smarter and going to be much more individual, and you're going to have choices of, do you want to start high and then relatively flat, or do you want to just...
I love it.
There's just so much cool stuff coming. But from a product design perspective, and I was on a podcast last year that was just on product design, it was not on fitness. On product design, what I said, okay, I need a stopgap. I need something in between. So what we were basically thinking is we put like a 1 pound weight into each hand, and it has a button. The right button goes up, the left button goes down. So instead of having to step towards the iPad,
right,
I have something that I can do in situ, that I can just do where I am. And so first of all, this is not ideal. Secondly, from a product perspective, it sucks because you have to do two more things.
One more thing, right.
Oh yeah, like
right.
have to build
two.
Yeah, but they would be the same. One we would just pair to the right, one to the left, but they would be physically the same. But it would be an extra thing to do, and it would be super expensive. And we're a small team. Like, we've literally built a device that never existed in the medical space. That is hardware. Sorry, I'm not going to say it. Hardware is fucking hard.
Yes.
It is so hard. So the one thing I have to say, okay, you can't change the world with just software alone, in my opinion, right? So I think what Elon is doing, like rocket, I would say hardware. Cars, hardware. Neuralink, whatever he's doing, like, it's hardware. I think software can only do so much, but really changing the world, you have to have hardware.
Well, absolutely.
But the size
and if you get the hardware right, then the software can accomplish a lot more.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. But getting a medical device, consumer hardware right with a small team is like just basically no backing from a GE or Philips or whatsoever. Just absolute disaster.
Especially with no market penetration to date.
Yeah.
So that it's brand new to the FDA.
Absolutely. Right. Yes, all of that. But then even reliability of product, right? And then mass production, horrible. Like, absolutely.
Right. Yeah, prototyping is easy. Mass production is order of magnitude.
Yeah. Prototypes are literally much like easier, and then making it consistently, reliably is absolute, yes. But then when you are building and as you go and you keep thinking about it, so I had to build a content engine anyway, because I identified like people need motivation and they need instructions and all that.
You need personal interaction to some degree.
Absolutely.
Right.
So I also had to build a trainer experience, because the trainer has to record this. So I'm not just saying like, okay, go. No. Mm-hmm. Also, to have consistency and good quality, I needed to create a trainer experience. So how am I doing this? Okay, so the trainer basically now is a performer in front of a camera. I want them to focus on the camera and the customer and what they're saying. I don't want them to be busy with building a device, constructing a device. And I don't want them to think about, okay, how many do I have left? And 3, 2, 1, what? I don't want them to constantly misspeak. I don't want them to think about what am I doing next. So we created a workout creating app, a second app, where the trainers are basically saying, okay, I'm going to do squats. I'm going to do 4 to the left, 4 to the right. And they're basically scripting their workout. Mm-hmm. And if there's a new one, okay, I'm going to do a new thing. And then what you see on the top left, right, I'm going to do a lunge with boxing or whatever, right?
Right.
And I'm going to name it, and I'm going to have a description for it, and then I'm going to do 8 to the left and 8 to the right, and then I have 2 base positions just to get some breath and do this and this. Mm-hmm. And the idea is the trainers basically just follow their own script. So when we record what the trainers see on their screen, it's basically a teleprompter.
Right.
They don't have content on it. They have big numbers so that they can glance them. Mm-hmm. And it's literally counting for them. 3, 2, 1 of these. Okay, the next is here. What's next coming? Like big letters. Mm-hmm. big colors, like literally teleprompter stuff like this. Yeah.
Right.
And it allows them to totally focus on the recording experience. Like, be with the camera.
Did you have to go through multiple iterations of that to figure that out? Because I mean, the end result is phenomenal. Like you don't think about. I mean, I love that they're like, okay, next we're going to do this, and while you're sitting in your base, they basically show you the exercise so that you don't even have to look up in the corner to see what the exercise is.
Yes.
I assume that wasn't like, oh, okay, right out the gate you had that.
Okay, I did.
You just okay, awesome, yeah.
For context, like the first gen product, and people still ask me like, how did you do this? And I think if you have your principles right, and if you have done product for a certain amount of time, and at that time I did product for 10 years.
You've solved a lot of the basics at that point.
Yeah. So for example, I built the first gen product software with 2 engineers and half a designer during the pandemic without any customer interaction from my kitchen table. And it worked.
That is, I mean, like I think I've told you in a phone conversation that, I was 2 years computer science in college, and it's like the app is phenomenal. I mean, it just blew me. I mean, it blows me away. It is just so easy. And it's like, when you tell me about the, you designing it without customer feedback.
Yes. And again, this is first principles, right? So for example, the top right, when you go to any website that's well designed, what's in the top right? There's my account, there's my informations, my orders, my whatsoever. If you're on eBay, if you're on Amazon, if you're on Google, whatsoever, you find it in the top right. Don't re-educate the customer on that.
Right.
Here on the top left, here are your options. Here's your menu. Here are your choices and all this kind of stuff. Great. Further down, it's like everything that's very current, right? So the top is generally persistent. There's a menu. There's breadcrumb. There's all these things on the top. And then we just basically built intuitive areas that basically would have everything together. So everything that you interact with is at the lower edge. Just the edge that's close to you when you're standing in front of your iPad. Right? Like don't make it worse.
Right, you don't have to go all over the screen to do stuff.
And
right.
This is much easier than this.
Right.
So like they're all horizontal.
Especially under load sometimes.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So yeah, that was something that worked pretty well right away. The trainer experience was not perfect yet. I mean, it's still not perfect is a word that I think we shouldn't be using because it wasn't really great yet. But for what we needed, it was good enough. It was totally fine. And we were able to produce content in the lockdown scenario. So one of our studios, so we had the 3 studios, 2 we closed down when we knew we were going to move over to the home system. But in 2019, we had about 150 customers in our Kirkland studios. And they said, where am I going to work out in between until you have it? And we said, okay, we're going to keep it open. So we kept it open to serve our customers. Again, we cared about them.
And then you have something to product test if you want to do some iteration stuff.
Totally. And it grew just through word of mouth. It's just amazing. It's like whenever there was this group of, I think they were Russians, like it was a group of Russian women, and they had a very tight-knit community over there. Every time a customer walked in, she pulled in another person with them. It's like, you have to try this. Like, you have to try this. Like, the word of mouth was just absolutely fun to see. And then we did these wine walks. Like, so Kirkland did these wine walks, which is like every quarter, like all the...
I've done a few.
Yeah? Okay, got it. And I think the customer came in with like 7 other people. It's like, hey, like, guys, yeah. You have to try this. Like they felt like, at least you have to try it. Like, it's just so different. Like, give it a shot.
Absolutely.
But so coming back to the customer experience and building it, and then over time. So for example, our workout selection got much better. A lot of last year was under the hood. A lot of reliability, the airplay casting. So for example, 3 years ago we had to hack that. You know that you can cast the the screen to an AirPlay TV?
I did not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
See, I'm loving this.
Yeah. So my favorite experience is I'm taking my mobile device and I cast to the TV. And I'm basically interacting with the TV. And if I do something, I have my iPad there to just make the increases. So in the scenario that you, in the app, cast to the TV, you basically have a two-screen experience.
Absolutely.
We had to hack that because normally how media players work in AirPlay is like YouTube or so on and so forth. It will pull a link and just play the bare video on the TV.
Just the way the software implementation is.
But the interface with your intensities is personal. So we needed an overlay. So we basically we had to hack it back in the days so that the AirPlay device would become an extended monitor of the iPad.
Right.
And we would actually
and
create
not have
the whole
it
video.
ever accidentally, you know what I mean? Like you wouldn't want it to like just transfer all control to the TV on accident.
No. That doesn't even work. That doesn't even work. The thing, it's not accident prevention, was actually enabled to create the experience that I can look at this TV and I can see everything I need.
Right. Well, yeah, absolutely.
So there's my timer,
Right.
there's the breathing at the top, right? So the pulses, which by the way is like breathe in, breathe out, is like literally how that's been made. And now Apple supports that and we can do that. We went to a more modern framework and much more reliability and all these things. No, the experience, how did we get here? Oh yeah, so intensity increases. So now the only thing that the trainers are doing during the workout is like they reach over and they make the intensity increases.
Well, I assumed that was acting. Like I assumed,
No.
okay, so they're actually training you as they go through too.
Yes,
okay,
it's
cool.
not acting. While they're doing it, so when they hit go on their own iPad, a telemetry stream is being created. And that telemetry stream is a mixture of what they pre-scripted. So for example, they say, we do lunges, we do this and whatever.
Yeah, to keep them on track, right.
Yes. And that is timestamp bound. So there's a timestamp on this. And then they hit their own iPad, they increase, they decrease, they do adjustments. And after the shot is done, that's being uploaded to our backend automatically from the iPad of the trainer. And this is the fascinating thing is like I had to create this like content creation process and I have IP on this. Yeah, capture, right. I have IP on this. You can even look up the patent. So that's fine. So this is not trade secret anymore because I've granted IP on this. So this is mine. So, and then then we do post-production on the video and then this gets merged. So when you are doing a workout, you're not only getting the video stream, you also, the iPad also gets or the iPhone or the app basically gets a telemetry stream. And that telemetry stream is controlling your suit. And this is why the suit knows what kind of frequencies, what kind of intensities, where are the ramp ups, when is the trainer touching this and whatsoever. So it is not only content streaming that the app is doing, it's also streaming the workout specific aspects so that you, coming back full circle to the trainer piece, you don't have to control the suit because the trainer is controlling the suit, although they are not in the room with you.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, and I guess that totally makes sense to me how you guys can put out as many workouts because I mean you're constantly adding new workouts.
Yes,
and that totally makes sense to me. That would be a huge hurdle.
Yeah,
like you would either have to do a lot of manual input on the back end to kind of start to create what you have as the end result, which would be an incredible amount of work and probably prone to error too.
Yes, definitely. So coming back to the beginning. So when you believe, in this case me, that this technology can change people's lives at scale, you have to always think about how does it scale. So it has to be so easy that people can use it on their own. It also has to be easy to build a ton of content. It has to be very easy. The content production process has to be so easy. when we did our last financing round, people were looking into that and they're like, I think there's a line item missing on your balance sheet, which is like, or, P&L, which is like content production. It's like, no, it's not. It's like, it's in here. And they're like, how are you doing this? It's like, we just absolutely have optimized this. I mean, we're filming in the desert. We're not renting a studio, which is actually much cooler.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. I remember the last workout I did, you guys were in front of a Connex.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, this is just cool.
Yeah. No, and it's also a mixture of, again, and this is like a brand and experience play. It's like, it also shows people that are not already using this on the go. It's like, it doesn't matter where you are. Mm-hmm. Right? It really doesn't matter where you are. And it's fun. I mean, I was laughing a little bit when I said, like, why is our guy in a suit doing golf workouts on the green? That will never happen. It's like, right. But we also were like, oh, come on, why not?
It's
right?
fun.
So it's like, yeah, exactly. It's just fun. We're not taking ourselves too serious here. And I'm going to do a pickleball, whatever, like racket stuff, on the course. Really? It's like, no, but we can, right? It's like, so we're not really taking ourselves too serious here. And it's like, hey,
right.
You can't carry your rower there. I mean, or your bolt a thing that was on the wall and bolt it somewhere else. Like, no, this is mobile. Let's be mobile.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I've done that a couple times with, one of the girls I've had try the suit out, and it's seamless. The only thing I did have an issue with is since I don't have my iPad, I didn't realize I need to create an account for her.
Ah, yeah.
So then I'm like, oh shoot, I don't have internet. So I, obviously once it's initially set up, it's great. And we could dive down around.
No, go.
Yeah.
But we went down the road of like how to build the product, and to close this out, maybe this chapter out. The design principles and the design goals were really, how do you create an easy to use, mass adoptable product that is like fun, that can be specialized, it's again easy to use. Sizing, huge topic.
Size, yeah, and sizing is, it's interesting to me, which I saw. I mean, it seems like there's possibly some other suits in Europe that have similar sizing, right? I mean, the way that they're not sizing, but the way that you adjust the suit.
Yeah, so studio suits, again, really first principles back. It's like, so rental equipment needs to be as adjustable as possible, because every time you get in a different person.
Right.
Also, I think studios generally try to have like 5 full suits, and 3 of them they're using all the time, and 2 are at the edges. Sometimes I think it's just 4, because the more different sizes you need, the more capital investment you need, the more capex you have sitting there.
Right.
So you're optimizing for capex, not for fit.
Right.
So the moment because I have a many-to-one relationship between customers and suits. In a consumer owning version, I have a one-to-one relationship between a customer and a suit. And now I can do 7, 10, 15, 13 sizes, and I ship them exactly what they need.
Right. And also you just have economy of scale at that point. So
definitely, yes.
So the cost per suit's going to go down.
Yes, there's not that much, because labor is pretty stable, and the parts that we're buying, yes, there's a little bit of that, but materials, it's not that much from an economy of scale perspective. Also, in the first gen of the product that we launched 2.5 years ago to the public, we had 7 sizes per item. This year we come out with about 13 sizes per item, especially on Brown the Vest.
Okay.
Yes. So the design principle around like the suit was, again, leave no one behind. If you are 70 years old, totally atrophied, weigh 100 pounds or less, like I have a suit for you. Mm-hmm. And if you're a 400-pound O-line center and want to get an extra training session in, we have a suit for you. So, and anyone in between. And the way we built this is like 3 different parts. So you have the arm straps, you have the vest, and the the shorts, and the AI that we're using after you give us your measurements is basically putting the the combination together of like what are the pieces that you need. I mean, we have men that invested a lot in food, but have atrophied legs. So you need a large vest and you need smaller shorts. Or you have pear-shaped individuals, you have apple-shaped individuals, you have V-shaped body types.
Right.
So, and this is why we have a 3-piece modular suit, so that we can have a lot of permutations between all these pieces.
Well, and the arms being separate makes total sense to me, which, you know, we can get into that later. But design decision as far as like adjusting upper body separate from the arms, was there a logic in that from a standpoint of like when I go to adjust my upper body, if I want to come up in my arms too, I have to separate.
There's no correlation between biceps and belly.
Right.
You can have all combinations of any of them.
Gotcha. Okay. So basically your core is static, separate, you know, your arms can be huge.
Yeah.
Or
yeah, you can have huge arms for different reasons.
Right. Okay. Okay. Oh, actually, okay. So that totally makes sense to me why you would adjust those separately now.
Yeah,
okay.
because it's not strength or muscle mass, it's just circumference.
Right.
Right. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that totally makes sense. So, you know, I'd love to move into, you know, like EMS in general.
Yes.
Like what, you know, one of the difficulties I have is expressing how the suit feels, right? So, you know, I guess let's start with just simple, you know, what is EMS?
So electromuscle stimulation is mimicking the signal that your brain would send through your motor nervous system to your motor neuron, or through your motor neuron to your end plates, to cause a voluntary contraction. And what electromuscle stimulation does is it mimics this signal, sends it through the skin directly to the end plates. So basically,
like where the motor neuron connects to the actual muscle fibers.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. And
are those spread throughout the muscle, or are they kind of at the beginning? Like if you know, if I have motor neurons coming to my bicep, are they kind of all across the muscle group?
They have to be to some extent, but there are generally concentrations. So, for example, on the quads, there are certain concentrations, and if you would use these sticky pad devices, like a Compex device or something like that, they would basically tell you where to put it.
Okay.
On the muscle. But what it's generally...
Because it's very, very like isolated and targeted at that point, because you're not blanketing like with the larger pads in the suit.
Yes. Okay. So it's isolated and targeted, but they generally, like for example, in the quads, they would take the ends, like, you know, this head and then this head, and basically try to have the muscle flow through the whole, the current flow through the whole muscle group, to excite as many motor neurons that are sit across this whole muscle. And there's an action potential. So there's ions that basically get emitted from the end plates, and these ions flow and enter the muscle cells. So a muscle fiber is a cell, one cell.
Right.
And within the cell, there's like ATP and whatsoever, like, you know, there's a lot of theory about it. We don't have to go too deep into that. But basically, what electromuscle stimulation does is it triggers a response of the end plates to release ions to cause the muscle to contract. It is a signal that tells it do something. It is not delivering the energy to do it.
Right. Okay.
So it is the switch. It is not the battery that runs the. So if you think of a light bulb, of a torch, EMS is the switch. EMS is not the battery that charges or like that powers the light bulb.
Right, and that's something I've mentioned multiple times in my videos, trying to explain, because I still occasionally get a comment where it's like, these suits electrocuting you, and I'm like, no, there's no way that this pack is good for 10 workouts.
Yeah,
20 minutes long.
Yeah, no, it's yeah. And by the way, electrocuting is an interesting term, and And I think we had electric chair. Yes, great, shitty idea, like ever doing this. And I'm very happy that we don't have these anymore. I think everything, the dose is made to the poison. It's like the classic saying, right? Mm-hmm. So I can touch someone and it could be very nice and gentle, and I can, touch my kid and, caress it. I can get a massage, or I can get punched. All three things are pressure.
Right.
Right. So it's all a question of like how much and in which dosage. And one of the things that we had to prove in our consumer clearance to the FDA was that it is safe to the heart.
Right, because you've got a chest pad sitting right over top.
Yes.
Right.
The EMS signal is triggering something called an involuntary muscle response, because your brain isn't telling it to do it.
Right.
And now two things can happen. It's either an add-on to your voluntary contraction. So ideally, when you're doing an EMS training, you're already flexed, and then the signal hits on top of it. You're not just loose, wobbly, and then something is happening.
Right.
So what you're basically doing is you're adding extra muscle work to your motion, to your contraction.
Okay.
And this is why the recruitment is higher than voluntarily. So even if you say like full on and you put something on top of it, it's still stronger.
Right.
The second thing, people ask like, where's the resistance coming from? Like why is this difficult? Why is this hard? And the way this works is if you did a biceps curl, you're only firing your biceps. Your triceps is relaxed. But in a full body EMS training or muscle stim training, your triceps is also firing. So now basically your biceps and your triceps are working against each other. And by the way, like if you start fully extended, so basically both muscles have the same angle to your elbow, and you go a little bit higher, you have no way to bend your arm because your triceps
I've noticed that. You have to start with your knees bent a little bit.
Yes, because your triceps is significantly stronger than your biceps.
Right.
It's just a stronger muscle. Like,
well, you do a lot more pushing than pulling.
Yes. Right. It's nothing bad. It's just like how the muscle's being built. It's like, you have a biceps and the triceps is just like, if you're doing it right. The same is with the glutes. The glutes are very strong. Like, if it's very high, like you always stand up, like, it's like, so that.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Yep. That's happening. And this is a good sign. It's just they're working. It's just, yes, great. Has nothing to do with a cramp. We can go to that later.
Right.
So people say like, oh, I have a cramp. It's like, no, this is how good a contraction feels like.
Right.
But you've never had it.
Right. If you're, and that's where, if you're really in tune with your muscles, I can flex my chest without having to flex other stuff.
Yeah.
Right. I can, but some people I notice, they can't do that, so it's great that, it does really, and tell me if I'm wrong. What I've said in my my getting started video is I want your muscle to contract even if you're trying to relax it, which is kind of where I set it to when I did it.
How do you mean?
If I'm sitting there and I'm adjusting the chest, right, I can force relax, but I also, if I just even slightly think about it, now I'm in contraction.
Yeah. So you want better access to your muscles. That's basically what you want, right?
Okay.
They want them also to have more potential to actually move. So it's not just that you're training your muscles, you're also creating a better mind to muscle connection. You basically, people, for example, a lot of us are glute weak, very glute weak. We're sitting a lot. And I learned a new term last year. Like I was at a conference and they were like, it was for, I think women over 55, like, that was the audience. And, they wanted me to come and it was great. We had a wonderful time. Because again, it's an audience that benefits a lot from what we're doing.
Oh, absolutely.
And they had said, Bjoern, and they were very funny. The whole group was like amazing. It's like, Bjoern, we all have the NBS syndrome. No, we all have NBS. I said, what's that? No butt syndrome. So we all need better glutes because also like, great, fine. Like we have a button for that. I said, it's like literally, I think you have a button for that. And a lot of people don't know how to activate their glutes properly.
Right.
So when the EMS contraction, like the EMS signal comes on top of this, it also teaches you, oh, this is how it's supposed to feel, right? So you get a response from that. There's an individual that started using Katalyst. He sits in a wheelchair and he's starting to walk again.
Get out.
Yes. And then it's a longer story and maybe it's a separate episode, or maybe we even get Edwin here. But he's learning how to use his body again.
Which as I understand it, that's the initial in the U.S. initial EMS is to start to reawaken.
Yes,
kind of in the
rehabilitate.
medical field, right?
Yes, exactly.
Rehabilitate use of the muscles so that you're.
But we've never tried to. We've always done this locally, and when people had no access, let's say, to their legs, we've given up. We don't even try it. We generally rehabilitate injured muscles, but not completely disconnected muscles.
Right, you're training the muscle, not the connection between the brain and the muscle.
Yes, so you're not really, but also at the time. So if there's significant nerve damage, and basically you say like I can't feel anything, it's terminal. That's it. So Edwin has the issue, and he told me that about a year and a half ago. Is like when you get a wheelchair, I didn't know that. Like there's a lot of stuff. There's, by the way, 2.5 million Americans in a wheelchair. It's just.
Oh, I had no idea.
It's a huge group. It's a huge group.
Wow.
At least that's the number that I remember, and I hope it's right. So you basically get a backrest, and the backrest is adjusted based on your condition, like how much can you move, where is it, so they can set it. And historically, the condition of a person who sits in a wheelchair only gets worse.
Right.
They always lose range of motion.
Right.
They lose strength, they lose core strength, everything. It's just everything.
You're forced to be restrained.
It's downhill.
Right.
He's getting stronger, so he basically needs a new backrest. And the insurance says, no, we don't want to do this because we've never done this before. Why should he get a new, so insurance doesn't want to pay a new backrest for him because they've never had to. So it's just these interesting, we donated, it's collected donations, got him a new backrest. But it's these interesting things that probably that's an extra episode, but
But see, that's the kind of stuff, there's a person who I was talking with who had brain surgery. And actually lost kind of more of a range of motion balance in one side of his body. Worked out his entire life and can't, not safely go in and do squats. Mm-hmm. He got a suit and was going to basically sit down to do upper body and then be able to lay on his back to do squats. Just the coolest conceptual.
Totally.
It's
by the
amazing.
way, if you have a jump box, a plyo box, you should sit on a plyo box and just get up from the plyo box. So even if you just fall, you just sit on a plyo box.
Okay.
It's a very safe way, especially for elderly people, to start squatting again.
Oh, perfect. Okay,
yes,
that's
you can do a chair, but if you have a plyo box, it's a bit better because it's wider and you can use your arms and so on and so forth.
Right.
But so one thing, just to clarify, at the moment we are cleared as a consumer device, not for a therapy device.
Right.
So what Edwin did, with his physician whatsoever, was a separate thing, and we're currently working on a extended clearance so that we go back to the prescription way because we want to help more people, and we see all these results.
Right. And to be able to have a physician be able to recommend it.
Totally, we already have that. People do this already, but even have more. It's called indications for use, so more causes you can fix. More things you can fix. We already know we can fix them, but we need the sign off you're allowed to fix them.
Well, see, that's actually interesting that you say that because I have a friend, who's a UPS driver, getting shoulder surgery, and he mentioned the suit, right?
Yeah.
His doctor said, I actually can't recommend that, but I think it's a phenomenal idea. And he was kind of like, well, okay, I'm not gonna push you on why you can't recommend it.
Yeah.
But he thought it was a great idea.
Yeah. I think in a few years it's going to be absolutely normal.
Mm-hmm.
So we're working on that, and it's going to be absolutely normal.
Mm-hmm. So obviously, EMS is safe. I think most people understand what a TENS unit is, but as I understand it, they're not the same thing. I mean, same conceptual technology, but what is the difference between a TENS unit and like an EMS pad?
So TENS stands for transcutaneous electric nerve stimulation.
Okay.
So TENS units are generally used for pain management. So they're all electric signals. It's a little bit like we have electromagnetic signals, which is like radio, light, X-ray. They're all electromagnetic. So they all have different frequencies. They all have different waveforms. So what a TENS unit is trying to do pain management, they're trying to exhaust the signal capacity of a sensory neuron.
So the neurons that would report pain,
exactly,
are getting overloaded and
getting exhausted.
Okay.
So they have no messenger ions anymore, and then the pain goes away.
Okay.
So it is targeted as, first of all, a different type of nerves. And it has totally different frequencies, totally different intensities, and so on and so forth. And the goal is not to contract the muscle. The goal is to exhaust the sensory neuron.
So different end targeted result. Like obviously your EMS pads are not overtaxing the motor neurons.
Sensory neurons.
No, I mean like an EMS pad.
Yes.
It's not overtaxing. It's not.
No, we don't want that.
Right. Okay.
No. We don't want. I mean, the key in a good EMS signal, electromuscular stimulation signal, is you want to trigger the motor neuron and not the sensory neuron.
Right. Okay, gotcha.
So this is one of the reasons why, for example, our pads are relatively big.
Oh, okay.
So the amount of energy that we're sending is being sent through a large area. So the likelihood of a negative sensory response is lower.
Interesting.
Because it's like, how much energy are we putting through a single space? And if you have like the sensory neurons being triggered, you have pain.
Right. So does that pain, I want to say the risk of pain, but the rate of pain felt, I would assume would correlate with as the pads get smaller, the chance of that would be higher. As far as
generally yes.
Okay.
Like, so rule of thumb, yes.
Okay.
Right? That will be long. The other thing is, and this probably goes too far at this point in time, but the way we modulate the signals is like we only send as much as we need. So we try to be as efficient as possible. So only send as much as you need so that you have a sufficient response on the motor neuron, but it's not long enough. So the sensory neurons take a little bit longer to react. They're a little bit slower.
Okay.
So the longer we send an individual signal, like we're finding the sweet spot between it's good enough to trigger this one and it's too short to trigger the other one.
Which is possibly like threading a needle.
It's very, very short. Yeah. So even if you have, let's say we would only use one area of, let's say only your glutes, and you're in strength or power mode, and it feels like you're constantly on, but you're not. It's just, if it were a light bulb, it would be a flickering light bulb.
Okay.
Because again, we're not delivering the energy to.
Oh, interesting. So it's not a metric of 4 seconds or 6 seconds or 10 seconds.
No.
It's the actual frequency pulsing.
It's just pulsing.
Okay, interesting.
And if you would take all the time that it's pulsing and combine it within 1 second, it would be just 3% of the time.
Oh, okay.
Super short. And by the way, across the whole body, only one pad is firing at a time.
Oh, interesting.
So.
Oh, interesting.
It's like, yeah,
very cool.
It's now we're getting really into the.
Yeah, no, I love this though. That's awesome.
So the way this works is, and this is why there's a lot of thought went into the design of how we're doing this. So what we're doing is, there's always two pads that talk to each other.
Okay.
So one is plus and one is minus. There's a current flow. And it immediately switches and goes, the same amount of energy goes back.
Okay.
So let's say I have the right biceps and triceps.
Okay.
So the biceps is sending a signal to the triceps and then it goes the other way back immediately.
Okay.
And the reason why we're doing this is called a bipolar balanced signal. So you have a plus and a minus, so like alternating currents. And the area under the graph, first of all, it's a boxy.
So it's not like a sine wave.
It's not a sine wave. It's a box. Okay. Because we know from math class, the biggest area that I can have with height and length is a square.
Right.
So if I have a sine, the area under the graph is much lower. Right? If I have a box, it's much bigger. So the area under the graph is the absolute amount of energy that we're sending to the motor neuron.
Okay.
To trigger the response. So we optimize this so that we actually have it only as the amplitude is as low as possible and the time is as low as possible so that we can deliver the signal.
So it's not consistent. It's not consistent. So it's positive and then negative.
Yes.
And then break.
Yes.
Okay.
And if you take positive and negative and adjust them all, it will be 3% of the time. It's just super short.
And that's across each muscle group or across all of the pads?
So each muscle group.
Okay.
So 3% is on one, then the next comes, then the next comes. So basically, if you would have, let's say we have this 9 areas of the body, and we had a light bulb for each of them.
Okay.
The first one would be flashing, second would be flashing, third one would be flashing, and when they're all flashed, the first one starts again.
Okay, so 3%. So is there basically 3/4 of the time is no pads firing? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes.
Roughly?
So in some modes,
I know
that's
this
the
is
case.
diving deep.
No. But this is in some modes that's the case. In power mode, it's a bit longer because we're firing more often.
Okay.
And this has something to do with fast twitch muscle fiber recruitment versus slow twitch muscle fiber recruitment.
Yes, and I want to dive deep on that. Yeah.
And so it's basically like tick, 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 tick. Like, it goes through the 9 groups. And what we can do this way is we can know exactly from where to where is the current flowing.
So that's where your red pads would come in, say for lack of conductivity. That's how you're being able to read, like if I haven't wetted my arm pads down.
Yes.
It's basically reading a signal that I can't feel.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we are testing all the pairs for good connectivity, so that's a good experience. But we also, during the workout, we know that there's a lot of balancing happening in real time. But we use the same system to also tell you, like, hey, you forgot to wet this one, or this one isn't good enough, or you forgot to tighten your suit properly.
Right.
Because the better the connectivity of the whole pad, the more comfortable the experience will be.
Right.
So this is just what we designed it for.
And I dive a lot into that in my videos because I would say one of the things that I noticed, because I tend to go whole hog. Like I go pretty hard on lots of stuff that I do. So I end up going, if I can tolerate it, it's not high enough. Like I'm kind of, not to the point, not excessive, right? But if I don't feel like I'm pushing it hard, then I feel like I'm being lazy, right? So that's where I started to notice conductivity became a bigger issue.
Yeah.
Right? I can run the suits at lower levels and it's fine.
Yeah.
But as soon as I start dialing it up, I do notice that, for instance, I will either jump in the shower in my undersuit before I strap it on and I wet the pads down. But like lately I've been just spraying the suit down with the spray bottle, the undersuit. Yeah. Right. And I still notice that because I can push probably 20, 30% higher with that increase in conductivity.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Makes a ton of sense. It's everything in physics, right? When you go to the edges, then, you figure out, you realize what's up there and what's not. But the thing why that is so important, the way we're doing this is, and if you open the suit, one of the things that you're going to see is there's a lot of pads on the upper body and there are fewer pads on the lower body.
Right.
So one of the things that the FDA was concerned about, and I think rightfully so, is something called transthoracic stimulation. So something where the stimulation goes across the body. Okay. So, for example, if you ever did a defibrillator training at work or something like this, like how do you basically use one of these devices if someone has a how do you call this?
Heart attack.
Yeah, it's not a heart attack. It's a AFib or like defibrillating, basically.
Right,
Yes.
right.
So it basically goes from the one side of the body and then the other one goes actually on the side of your ribs so that the current actually flows across the chest. And traditionally, EMS devices had one pad on the right chest, and basically everyone but Katalyst still has. So one on the right chest, one on the left chest. One on the right arm, one on the left arm. One on the right lat, one on the
I
left
could see
lat.
where that would start to be a little scary from a standpoint of mimicking a defibrillator.
I mean, for context, it is not
Right.
an issue because the signal that a defibrillator sends is about 100 times higher than what an EMS device sends at full time, and it's a constant. It's not at 3% of the time; it's a constant.
Wow. Okay.
Right. So when you see in the movies when they like a person, like the person is just like totally like yes, right. So if in an emergency situation, so there's a term called transcutaneous pacing. So it's basically pacing through the skin. QT is like the
Okay. Yeah,
so transcutaneous pacing is you basically put like big pads on your body and you're trying to keep the body going. It's a medical, like if you have a heart problem, there are certain conditions where you need that. It is so painful and unpleasant. They have to sedate the person.
Yeah, I can
No,
imagine.
they literally have to sedate the person. Otherwise you can't do it. So, but that is how much energy you basically need to actually reach the heart. So forget about it. It's not happening. But still, over time, if there's a signal constantly crossing, we want to prevent that. We don't need it.
Well, it's inefficient.
Also, we don't need it. Right. So, if we can prevent any side effects, just don't do it. So this is why we have, as a unique design, which in the discussion with the FDA allowed us to pass, was we have 2 pads on the right pack. We have 2 pads on the left pack.
There is. Yeah. Okay.
We have 2 pads on the right trap and on the left trap, and on the right lat and on the left lat, and on the right arm and on the left arm. So all our stimulation is kept local. It doesn't even leave the muscle.
Totally.
And it's the only device that has it on the market. And again, I have IP on that. So if you spend 10 years of your life putting it something, you also want to protect it, right?
Absolutely. No, 100%. And, I have noticed, as I'm testing out other suits or another suit, is there is issues there, right? Like I noticed that it flexes really deep, almost to the point where it's uncomfortable at some points, and I assume that that's maybe part of that. Yeah.
There is an issue that, let's discuss it at another time around this. But I agree, transthoracic stimulation shouldn't be an end consumer thing. All the studio devices basically are under supervision of someone, and if something would happen, there would be someone in the room. I don't think that's going to happen. You never know. Right. So, we have been using this for 15 years and nothing has really happened. But also, I'm like, So I'm a big fan of better safe than sorry. So let's get it right.
Right. Why?
Yeah, exactly why. It doesn't, it's not needed. And in any sticky pad example, you just put it on the muscle with 2 pads. Right. But now on the lower body, we do it differently. So first of all, there's no heart. Right. So in the lower body, we have one on the right glute, one on the left glute, one on the right hamstring, one on the left hamstring. So the current flow is going from this one muscle to the other muscle, and they're basically being contracted. But we also have the positive side effect of a pelvic floor and core training. Because there's
interesting. So incontinence.
Yes, totally.
All of that's okay.
So female postpartum incontinence, basically consider it a thing of the past. Literally a thing of the past, which is
awesome.
Tens of millions of women, suffering from that.
Absolutely.
Right? Are we cleared for this? Especially, can I claim this? No. What I can tell you anecdotally is I know a few handful of women who told me this was one of the side effects that they would have not expected. And they're like, this is amazing.
Right.
It's absolutely amazing. Yes.
That's fun. That in itself to me it actually totally makes sense because, that was my curiosity is, is it going from the front to the back? And I'm like, no, it can't because you can adjust the hamstrings and the quads separately.
Yes.
So that,
But it will. I will do that soon because what if you're an amputee on one leg and you still want to work out?
Oh, good call. Yeah.
So again, so
would that be able to be implemented in software?
Not quite, because the impulse pack can currently not. So you
can't cross across multiple channels, which I guess would be a safety issue.
Exactly. So that's exactly it, right? What we are absolutely making sure that there's never an opportunity that, for example, one pad on the front can talk to one pad on the back, because then I'm transthoracic
going
again.
through the heart,
right?
Or
like whatever that is, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
So we really went, okay, so what else could go wrong? Get it out. What else can go wrong? Get it out, whatsoever. And I just want this technology to have a chance to fulfill its potential. And that's generally my approach. It's like that if there's other companies that do an awesome job and, be out in the market. So we're currently talking and collaborating with a studio chain. Great. Yeah, you have a different business model. We have a different, fine. Who cares? Let's coexist. Let's help the people.
Some people really like, I have talked with multiple viewers who really, it's kind of like the difference between CrossFit, right? And say just going to the gym by yourself. You're motivated by other people there, right? And so those studios, I could see where it's like, well, the cost, the initial cost. I look at everything as an investment, right? And it totally makes sense to me. Where I draw the line on that is now I have to get in the car. You go right back to the gym at that point, right? So, obviously EMS 100% activates, the muscles.
I don't know if it's 100%, but close to.
Well, I just mean it's not a question of whether it's a gimmick or not.
No, it works.
It absolutely,
works.
right. Yeah. And that's where, I wish I could somehow give that to people through video. It's pretty much impossible to sit there and say, this is what you will feel.
Yeah, feeling is hard to put in words, and I don't know what you've used as description.
It's like involuntary muscle contraction. But then, I could see how somebody like an electrician who's been electrocuted, right, correlates some of the feeling that would come out of the pads with that feeling.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel like that to me because I've switched out, switches.
Yeah.
And I've been electrocuted with 110. It's not remotely the close, right?
I've been with 380, but yes. And it was just a nice bulb. It was like a light bulb. Actually, my eyebrows got burned from the light bulb.
That's a new one to me.
and here's the one. I had a sunburn on my iris, on my retina.
Oh, that's scary.
Not on the. Well, what's the one in the back? Yeah, basically, it was like so bright. It was a sunburn for the short amount of time. So I had
spot.
A spot, not spot. It's just I was just tearing for like a week, literally. I needed special drops and whatsoever. It's
like watching a nuclear explosion at that point.
It's like right. Not quite, but yes.
So one of the things that I know everybody in the EMS field has talked about is that, EMS, you can get better results if you go to the gym and hit it really hard. After using EMS, I don't see how that's the case. EMS, why? EMS absolutely builds muscle. It does create
absolutely,
hypertrophy,
100%. Yes,
correct?
100%.
So if it's creating hypertrophy, why would, say, the gym be better to build muscle than, say, an EMS suit?
I don't think it's either or.
Okay.
I don't think it's better or worse. And so, first of all, it's
an alternative.
I think it could be complementary.
Okay.
Or it could be an alternative. It depends on who you are and what your goals are.
Okay.
And maybe let's take a step back and just, I don't know if all viewers or listeners know what hypertrophy is. So let's very quickly go there. So there's two things in muscle growth. There's hypertrophy and hyperplasia. And hyperplasia is basically you're building new muscle cells. So the muscle is growing by adding more muscle cells.
Okay.
And when the fetus is growing, and when this human that is not livable on its own becomes livable on its own, we're basically starting with one cell, right? And then we're parting, and creating this whole organism. And after that's being done, your number of muscle cells is set. You have a given amount of so many muscle cells. Let's say you had 1,000 muscle cells. So when that's hyperplasia is done. Like more plus new plasticity is not being built. Like new extra cells not being built.
Okay.
So now, how did my small muscle become a big muscle? And that's hypertrophia, which means an individual cell has been broken down, dead, and gets replaced by a better version. The number of cells stay the same.
Okay, interesting. Yeah.
And this is one of the theories why we have soreness, because we have inflammation. Because if a cell is broken, it's dead. All the material needs to be taken out. There's generally inflammation, which means there's a heat, right? So then blood cells and T cells and whatsoever come in, break things out, and it's being replaced by a new cell. So that's the recovery part of it.
Right.
And this is why it's so important that your nutrition is up to date and you have enough protein,
speed
enough
recovery and rest.
Especially you have the building blocks. So the body has the building blocks to actually do the replacement. Mm-hmm. It has the replacement parts.
Right.
It has the light bulb to switch to the light bulb.
Right. And again, we probably should get into nutrition in a different. But, that's something that I've talked with the viewers about, too. It's not just protein.
And I'm not a certified nutritionist, so technically I have no clue.
I'm a guy on the internet, too, right? Yeah. Exactly. So beyond
hypertrophy, yes.
Hypertrophy,
yes.
Right? It absolutely creates hypertrophy.
Yes. So you get stronger.
Yes. You get stronger correlative with, say, the size of the muscle.
Yes.
Okay? Mm-hmm. But it also increases strength.
Yes.
Which is outside.
Which is usable muscle mass.
Yes.
So it could be that you get, first of all, access to your muscles better. It's one thing, like you learn how to use them. Mm-hmm. Especially in the early workouts, you break down unused, broken in atrophied muscle fibers and replace them. But you see, for example, rock climbers have incredible strength. Like they have like middle finger and they do like big pull-ups and and they're not big, right? So building strength is generally a question like, how often do you work out? How strong do you work out? And in the gym, you do this. Do you 1 repetition, 3 repetitions? Do you do 15, 20, like whatsoever? and you can do both with that. The reason why I say it could be an add-on or it could be an alternative for me is the following question. Who are you and what are you trying to achieve? Let's just use just the gym for a moment. Mm-hmm. And I have like one of these like pressing machines where I have these 2 arms and I'm just doing, bench presses. Mm-hmm. I'm getting stronger, but what I'm not getting at all is any coordination because I'm literally on a track. This thing is on a track. So even if I'm like pushing inside, outside, up, down, I'm still on this track.
Right.
The next step up would be a bench press with a barbell, long bell. Okay. I need to coordinate this thing a little bit.
Right.
The next step up is 2 dumbbells. Mm-hmm. Now I have like, all kinds of coordination to do. Something that EMS cannot do.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, yeah, I could see how that would be. Right, and the next step is on a Bosu ball, right, with the dumbbells. Right, exactly.
Right.
Okay.
So depending on what you're trying to achieve and where in your fitness journey you are, there are things that you cannot do with EMS training.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that totally makes sense. And I could see how, training, almost the neural pathway training of those stabilizer muscles, right?
Yes.
Not even just building the muscles, but the actual use of them in a balanced situation.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. So that you can't do. On the other hand, the very explosive type 2 muscle fiber education and training, you can't do in the gym.
Well, that was kind of my, that was one of the big eye-opening things for me, was reading through some studies of professional athletes who had 10, 15, as much as 21%, I think 21% was in female volleyball players for certain.
Speed increase, right. Jumping increase, crazy.
And it's not like they haven't been jumping their entire lives.
Yes, exactly.
But it goes up that much in 8 to 12 weeks. That was that. And so, my current thought on that is, if you're an athlete and you're not using EMS, you're selling yourself short.
I mean, it's basically legal PEDs.
Legal what?
Performance enhancing drugs.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's absolutely legal, and it's fine, and it's just a way of training, right? It's almost like you're not cold plunging. It's almost like almost that as an athlete, right? And there's, so if you actually want hypertrophy, you don't want to cold plunge 4 hours after a workout, because you want some inflammation you want.
Right.
If you are, for example, in a tournament and you don't want the inflammation, so this is what, for example, there's a very famous scene where at the Soccer World Cup 2014, where Germany wiped the floor with everyone. Last time we played well. After that, we basically vanished as a soccer nation. There was a guy, and cold plunging wasn't a thing yet. So he had a brand new trash can, like a big trash can, and he filled it with ice water, and he just went into his ice bucket.
Oh, interesting.
Literally, it's just was in Brazil, and it's I'm now going back in my ice bucket. And everyone, what? And there was a big trash can, and he just basically filled it up with water and ice and whatever, and went into it, because you wanted the inflammation to go out.
Right.
But coming back, it's if you're an athlete and you're not using it, you're missing out. Because two things are happening. And by the way, Bolt used this through his whole career. A lot of Olympians use it. And in Europe, it's very, very common, and soccer is very common. So two things. First of all, you can train fast twitch muscle fibers in a very, very efficient way. Most importantly, without injury risk.
Right. Yeah, you can train them with EMS in a very... Right.
Exactly.
Right.
So
So how would you normally train fast twitch muscle fibers?
Extreme loads, because they come in very late in the recruitment process. So if you think about, if I squeeze something, or if I want to lift something, the body tries to be as efficient as possible at the beginning. Right. So using slow twitch muscle fibers, which have a lower energy consumption and a different cycle. And then towards the end, the recruitment kicks up. So fast twitch means they're kicking in fast. It doesn't mean they come in early. They come in very late in the recruitment.
Right.
And then they kick in. So you need either heavy loads, or you need very fast movements. So this is why sprinters use a parachute behind them, but they're still sprinting.
Okay.
This is why he's trying to... So one of the training principles is progressive loading. So you always need a harder thing for the muscle to do to have a growth effect. If you keep doing the same thing, the muscle just stalls where it is. You plateau out.
Okay.
You have to give the muscle something new to do.
Okay.
And the way, at one point in time...
Well, as you're tiring out, certain amounts of muscle fibers, that I would assume that's what you mean by progressive loading.
No. What I mean is if today I do this, and in 3 days I do the same thing, and then 7 days I do the same thing, after 2 weeks I'm flat out.
Right.
So always need to do something that is a little bit more progressive to get to the muscle to a better state. When I'm sprinting, that's really hard, because I'm sprinting as hard as I can.
Right.
So the progressive loading is either a rubber band, or someone is slowing me down, or it's a sled or a parachute or something like this, right? So to put that up. The challenge with athletes, especially ones who do more than one discipline, so for example, if you triathletes or decathlons or something like this, they have so much training volume. Or baseball players, they play every day. They have so much volume, they have no recovery time. So adding extra sessions, training sessions, into their regimen doesn't fit.
Right.
So you need something that is basically not loading the joints, not loading the ligaments, and doing exactly what you want to do. And that doesn't exist in traditional training.
Right.
Because you always have to lift a weight, you always push something, pull something, and so on and so forth. By the way, quite interestingly, if you just think about it, a muscle has a lot of capillaries, so a lot of blood vessels. So the amount of nutrient flow is very high. and that it basically determines the recovery time.
Okay.
A disc, a ligament, cartilage, very low.
Right.
So the recovery time is totally different.
Absolutely.
So your muscle might be ready to go again, your knees are not.
Right. Right.
So now if you want to add let's say the basketball, a post-game day workout should not load your knees, should not load your ankles, shoulder.
Right.
But you might want to do a light recovery, active recovery for your muscles.
Right.
How do you do this with weights?
Without loads. Right. Right.
So this is where EMS comes in. So there are things that you have to use real world weights and resistance that EMS cannot do. But then there are things that EMS can do which the real world traditional training can't do. And this is what I'm saying is like that's complementary.
Right.
I would never say all or nothing.
Right. And see, I've pretty much, I'm in a situation where it's somewhat, well, it has to replace the gym because I just don't have time.
Exactly. That's the other group.
And then also, the way that I'm working out, there's not a day when there's maybe one day where I'm not sore. So, as soon as I'm ready to go, I hit it again.
Yeah. You're one of these addicts. Like totally. Yes.
Yeah.
No, I'm like, so I totally get it. It's like, I talked to a psychologist the other day and I said, is there an example where people are addicted to positive things? He said, yeah, runners high. One of these things, and then post-workout endorphin rush, and the population is less than 1% of the people.
Oh, okay.
Everybody else is addicted to negative things.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, nicotine, alcohol, sugar.
Yeah. Yeah, negative
Netflix.
clickbait. Right, exactly.
Yeah, no, it's like dopamine on my phone.
Right.
Right? So
absolutely.
like Simon Sinek, on his dopamine response, no likes and so on and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is why I'm not on social. I know I have to get on social, but I'm not on social. It's like, so my team forces me on social. But you're first of all, you're one of these positive addicts, which is amazing, right? Perfect. Love it. Congratulations. Like if you get to
I've never heard of that, but yeah, absolutely. That's cool. Yeah.
Because you are addicted.
Way to justify my addiction.
Yeah, it's a positive thing, right? It's absolutely positive.
Absolutely. What I have found about your suit, though, and I will say this. The suit elicits that response in much greater than 1% of the population.
Oh, yeah.
I have so many people who are like, I'm addicted. Like, I crave the stimulus now.
And now we're coming back to what we talked about an hour ago. Ability and motivation creates behavior. So when in the past people said, "Oh, I wanna travel," and travel took 2 weeks to get to a different continent,
right.
Only few people do this.
Right.
Now we have planes.
Right.
So what we've created with Katalyst, what I hoped to do, but when you see it, it's actually happening. That's a totally different moment. But you hope to do was we empower a larger portion of the population to get to these positive habits, to get to the positive addictions, right? You don't have to be a triathlete or a really strong runner to get to these.
Right.
After 20 minutes, when you get out of the suit, you feel accomplished. You feel amazing.
100%.
You feel absolutely yes. So I yesterday had an absolute low energy day. My wife as well. I don't know if something we ate or whatsoever. We were like we're like schlepping through the day, like literally. And okay, I'm gonna do this. I have to do this paperwork and whatsoever. It's like stuff that adds up. And then at 6 p.m. I was like, okay, I'm now gonna do Katalyst. Period. Sorry, F it. I'm gonna still do it. It's like there's no excuse. Period.
You can do anything for 20 minutes.
Yes, exactly. Right. There's no excuse. I get into it. After that, I felt so much better. You know what I regretted? I should have done it at 10 o'clock.
Right.
I should have done it at 10 o'clock.
Your entire day at that point.
And I know this, and then, whatsoever. But then I needed to get some groceries because I wanted to cook, and it was a slow cook. It took 4 hours, and it needed to be done by 2 so that we're ready for dinner. So I basically just, I didn't do it at 10, but I should have done it. Like that would have been the right thing. And this is like the other group. So the other group is not the athletes or the people that are really already successful with the fitness. Because that's basically what we're talking about here. It's either someone who already has a fitness regimen for themselves, or someone who doesn't. And for someone who doesn't, it's basically the entry drug. It's the gateway drug. It's the thing, okay, something works, finally. I mean, what do we have? Like February 4th. Great. Let's ask people who had New Year's resolutions, how are they going?
Right, absolutely.
It's 1
Did
month
they last
in.
more than a week or two?
It's 1 month in,
Right.
right? So do you really want to try something that actually works?
Right. And see, and that was something I would love to, and if you guys aren't doing it yet, I would love to see the numbers, because, you know, when I grew up, there was something called Nordic Track.
Yes.
Right? It was the simulated cross-country skiing.
Yes.
And I remember one of their ads was, you know, 75% or 80% or whatever of Nordic Track owners still use their Nordic Track 1 year after purchasing it. Like, I see that with Katalyst 100%. Like, it's not the exercise equipment. It's not anything that's holding you back. It's you scheduling 20 minutes once a week. If you can't do that, it's not the equipment's issue at that point.
Then we can't help you. Yes.
Right.
But I mean, there's still stuff where we constantly have to, for example, what we currently not do is, and that we have to also add is, we're not sending you push notifications. We miss you like 3 weeks whatsoever. Like, there's definitely stuff that we have to do that everybody else is doing already. But we were first dealing with making a better experience, a better product, and we're busy with that.
Right.
But it's no excuse to not have it. So we definitely are going to go there, and we're doing this year for sure. The thing, just to close out the other group, and this is people that now positively get addicted to this. What you just described for yourself is like why the gym doesn't work for you is one of these limitations. Like, you have a time limitation. Some people might have an ability limitation where it's like they're either overweight or they don't know what to do in the gym.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. That's
or
a big one.
they're afraid of getting injured, or they have a previous injury and are afraid of getting injured again.
Right.
So when you have these limitations, Katalyst is a great way to start. And maybe it stays the only way you do.
Right.
But it's much better than not doing anything.
Right.
If you then want to go and say, oh, I feel so good, now I want to add something else, like get some free weights, like do something here and there, or go to yoga, or get a...
It's like a gateway, I don't want to say gateway drug because that sounds bad, but it's almost like a gateway into fitness.
Yes. Yeah. No. So, and this is why I think it's a way to access your own endorphins, to access your own... I mean, cold plunging is an endorphin rush afterwards, right? That's definitely...
You just got to get through that initial...
Yes. and this is one of the pieces that I find personally fascinating, and that's discipline. I don't know, sometimes this word is being connotated positively, negatively, and whatsoever. It's like, I mean, there's no excuse. Just do it.
Right.
And the difference between people who cold plunge and not cold plunge, there's no physical ability. The only thing is, do I have the mental strength to do this or not?
Right, 100%.
It's like,
100%.
do I have the will to do this? And it might be hard at the beginning, but over time it becomes much easier.
Right. And I think that's one of the big things, you know, just in a lot of general things, is that people don't want to fall on their face. They don't want to fail, right? So then you start that, and then you quit after 2 weeks. You feel kind of like, now am I
so you stop trying because you might fail?
Right.
No,
well, exactly.
No.
But
like, yeah,
well,
I get it. I get it. But you shouldn't. But
absolutely,
you shouldn't.
Absolutely.
So what we are really trying to do with this technology, and that's what you've seen with like your listeners and viewers and so on and so forth, is helping with the initial or maybe long-term, I don't know, approach to getting to this reward. Like I said, the first run is half a year away.
Right.
You need a lot of discipline to stay for half a year on it.
Right.
Here, when you've done it once, like 2 days later, you know what you've done.
Right.
And a month later, people start talking to you.
Right.
Like I had customers telling me, yes.
Yeah, what are you doing? What have you changed?
You also heard that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And that is, and I sometimes feel it's just people's posture. They're proud of something.
Right.
They earned it.
Right.
So if you get a liposuction, yes, you might have lost weight, but you didn't earn it. You just paid for it.
Right.
I'm not saying that's a bad thing.
Right.
If you want it, totally fine. But it doesn't create this emotional pride.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there is pride, essentially.
Yeah,
like
in a good way. In a good way, right? Yes, exactly. Self-esteem.
Right.
Your self-esteem definitely goes up because it's not easy. You're fighting.
Right. I always question. I always hesitate to phrase it this way, but initially I kind of said it's like drinking your workout through a fire hose.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's all of your body, right? It doesn't have to be that much. That's what I realized afterwards. It's like, I don't want to scare people off because it's not that way.
Yeah.
It's that way if you want it.
Exactly. But I think it is a step up from whatever you've been doing, no matter who you are.
Right.
If you're an athlete.
That's a great way to put it.
Right?
That's a great
if you're an athlete, you see like 2 minutes in, they exactly get it. Mm-hmm. Okay, do this, do that. They give you instructions. I want more here, want that.
Yeah, their connection.
They already have it.
Right.
Yes. If you're a person who never felt this way, it takes them a little bit longer. Mm-hmm. But then they are like fascinated. Mm-hmm. Oh, like this. Why is this hard?
And I've had, probably should dive into this a little bit later, but this is a question I have for you. For those beginners, right? And they kind of freeze up at 150, say, right? Mm-hmm. But then they're not sore 2 days later.
I would say if you end up at 150, if you end your workout at 150, you should feel something. You're not fully sore, but you should feel something.
Okay.
It is with anything else, it's like what you put in, you get out. Like that's definitely the case. However, what I would say is push yourself a little bit. And what I hear a lot, especially from women, the first time they go, it's like, oh, wasn't that bad? Next time I'm going to do a little bit more. Mm-hmm. So just challenge yourself a little bit.
Right.
Don't be comfortable in like, oh, this is good enough. Like,
right. Well, and what I've said is, your mind-muscle connection might be the bottleneck, right? It might be the weak link. So now, as you work out, you will find that. Yeah.
And I mean, exercise science is not settled on soreness.
Right.
However, there's a lot of people who say, if you're not sore in an area, how are you going to tell that you actually hit the area?
Right.
So I'm a mixture of like, I don't want to be sore that I can't move. Like, that's not a good.
And I've been there a few times.
Also, like, yes,
hard.
I'm like, oh yeah, okay, fine. Like,
if you don't do that, then you don't know your limits.
Yeah. And then I think you can't get injured anyway, right? There's this aspect of soreness, but it's not that you're tearing anything or that you're really breaking something down. It's like, it's just like a lot of work, and it would have happened with something else, or like you start renovating and you have never done overhead work like ever, but now your shoulders are basically, or your traps are just burning.
And that's something, what I've told people is don't work out if you're sore, because that's a pure sign that you're still rebuilding. So don't start tearing muscle down that's not fully recovered. But if you're not sore, 48 hours later, so you can hit it again.
I would say 48 hours is the minimum that you should keep in between. If you're super sore, don't go. I think over time, 48, 72 is going to be the sweet spot.
Okay.
2 to 3 days is going to be the sweet spot for strength or power.
Okay.
Cardio you can do in between.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And almost is a great recovery from my perspective. Increase in blood flow. Sometimes I get too tired.
I'm also adding like 10 minutes of cardio generally to the end of a strength training.
Interesting.
Like,
okay.
Yeah. I'm already in the suit. I already invested the time to get in there. Like, set everything up. My TV is already running.
Right.
So just like add 10 minutes of cardio.
See, and I've done it in the beginning because I'm trying to increase blood flow so that I can hit the suit at higher levels, which is obviously
yes. So, and the question is, what's your goal? If you want muscle endurance, do it this way. If you want hypertrophy, don't.
Okay.
Because the easiest to reach energy source in your muscle is the glycogen. And when you're already doing cardio, you're burning some of that because this is what your body goes first to. So you don't have the energy anymore for the strength training.
Sets.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
So this is why warm-ups pre-strength training shouldn't be too long.
Right, okay.
5 minutes, something like this, on a treadmill. If you're doing Katalyst, it's much more full body, right? So just work out.
Probably a minute's fine.
2-3 minutes max, like whatsoever, and like do that. But this is what we have like in the very basic warm-up of these 2 minutes in the workout anyway.
Okay.
Right? I'm going around there, and don't go too high right away. So this is what the ramp up is for.
Okay.
And then you can push it a little bit later.
So you guys have already thought through that for me.
Maybe.
Even as an advanced user, right? Okay, fair enough. Okay, let's start diving through some of the stuff faster because I don't want to take too much of your time. Okay, EMS.
I think we're going to get kicked out here at the studio at one point in time.
Okay.
And hey, let's definitely do this again.
Oh, absolutely.
There's just so much more.
There's so much more to go through.
Totally.
Yes. EMS for fat loss. Studies show that it increases metabolism.
Yes.
But probably no more than other physical activity.
So yes and no. So I today have an in-body at home, which is a basically body impedance measurement scale.
Okay, yeah.
And I basically got one. I've been measuring my metabolism basically for about 10 years now.
Okay.
But then last 6-7 years, this is like gyms have these. Like these are $10,000 devices. They're super precise. Because I literally wanted to over time see where I'm going. And
like implanting a blood sugar monitor or something.
Stuff like that. Right. Yes, you go for it. So my basal metabolic rate, which is if I would lie in bed for the whole day, not move, is 3,480 calories. Not moving at all.
Right.
But that is because I have 112 pounds of muscle mass.
Right.
So building lean muscle mass is the best way to fix your body.
Right.
Fat loss is the aftermath of that.
Okay.
So basically, what you want to do is you want to increase your burn. But when you do cardio, you stop burning the moment you step off the treadmill.
Gotcha.
It's a temporary fix. Let's say if someone spends an hour on the treadmill, let's say they burn, if they really go hard, like what, 500, 600 calories, 600 calories?
Yeah, that's hard. Yeah.
You really have to go for it.
Right.
Most people that are in fat loss, they can't do that.
Right.
They do like 350.
Right.
Spend the hour in strength training or 20 minutes in Katalyst. Build healthy muscle mass and get your basal metabolic rate up by 300, 400 calories a day. You're basically spending an hour on the treadmill every day without being on the treadmill.
Right.
Every day.
Right.
And that lasts. So now, get your nutrition in order. So even athletes say, or like bodybuilders, abs are made in the kitchen. So it's 70-30.
Right.
Cut out the sugars, especially the hidden sugars.
Yeah, and we could do a 4-hour podcast on nutrition stuff. Absolutely.
But really, so EMS training is not a fat loss mechanism.
Okay.
It's a muscle building mechanism.
No more than other cardio. Say if in the cardio mode.
Oh yeah,
Right.
it's probably you probably have an afterburn effect because you're burning quite a bit because you're using a lot of muscle mass. It's probably more per minute, definitely. But what I would say is, if you want to get in shape, which is basically what you're saying, it's not fat loss. It's like you want to lose fat, yes, but it's not weight loss. Let's be very clear.
Right.
So I'm today
heavier.
Yeah. I'm now 210. I used to when I first did Katalyst, I was 180.
Oh wow.
Yes.
So
skinny runner, but I was about 18% body fat. I'm down to 10. So.
And this is over how many years?
8 years.
8 years?
But the biggest change was over the last 5 years, I would say. Biggest change. Because this is when I also changed a lot of my nutrition and
right.
very protein heavy now. Very I eat huge portions. It's all the right stuff. And so it's not weight loss. It is muscle gain and fat loss. That's really what it is.
Right.
And with muscle gain, we can help. Fat loss is a balance sheet.
Right.
Eat less than you burn.
Right. You could increase your metabolism, but if you end up eating more, then it doesn't really matter. Right.
So, but what I see is with customers and what we hear a lot is you're becoming stronger. You're becoming more active. Once all of a sudden you take the stairs instead of the elevator. once all of a sudden you take small walks or you take a Zoom call on a walk instead of at home. And
Right.
so
Absolutely.
it's, again, coming back to this entry drug, and this is why I actually like it, or gateway drug, why I actually like it. It's like you're starting to like your body rather than just have negative feedback from your body, because we are all generally used to negative feedback from our body.
Right.
We're in pain, we're hurt, we're tired, we're hungry,
Especially as you get older.
headaches,
Right.
all kind of stuff, right? So once you say like, oh no, I feel good about this, let's go, right? Let's go for a walk.
Yeah, and I've incorporated a lot of walking.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
and I love it because it's like peaceful. Podcast,
Right.
audiobook, whatever.
And so it's not weight loss. Generally, it's fat loss that you should be caring for. And the best way to do this is getting healthy muscle mass.
Right. Right.
The
Which
rest-
totally makes sense. Right.
That's what I would say.
What is the difference between strength and power frequencies?
Yes. So fast twitch muscle fibers, when they are elicited, they also drop out. They react fast, but they also relax fast.
Okay.
They contract fast and they relax fast. In strength mode, the EMS signal triggers both, but the fast twitch muscle fibers immediately relax.
Okay. So
basically, what's happening
fire
is
and then relax throughout the 4 seconds.
so what we talked about earlier was like there are small signals rather than small pulses rather than this constant, right? So the first time we send the signal, the slow twitch muscle fibers get elicited, and they then get the second signal, and they get more and more and more until it builds up to a full tetanus,
Okay.
to a full contraction.
Okay.
In that frequency that we're using, which is 75 hertz, so 75 pulses per second, are not fast enough to catch the fast twitch muscle fibers on the peak to actually build up from there. They're already falling down. So basically, the fast twitch muscle fibers are not firing. The slow twitch muscle fibers are firing.
Okay.
So all your contraction energy comes from one source. So all the energy that's burned is from one source.
Interesting. Okay.
So now when we do pulse faster, we catch the fast twitch on the peak and we actually build up a full tetanus. So we train both at the same time for a balanced muscle build.
Okay.
But because the fast twitch muscle fibers also are more energy consumptive, that's where the majority of the energy goes.
Right. Which is why at least I get tired faster.
Yeah. You have at least you have definitely a stronger response.
So, for instance, in elderly people, right, and the ability to regain fast twitch muscle fibers, are you training fast twitch fibers in minute 1, minute 2 of a workout? Or is it more that you're kind of starting to tire out more of your slow twitch muscle fibers over time, so it's having to recruit more fast twitch?
During EMS?
Yes.
No, it's like the signal determines that.
Okay,
so even in power, you're starting from
anything like weightlifting at that point. Okay.
No.
Okay.
It's not a function of how long am I working out.
Okay.
It's a function of how often is this thing pulsing.
Okay.
And that's happening immediately.
Okay.
And interesting that you have to bring up, like, especially fast twitch fibers for elderly people. Of course, we're not competing anymore.
Right.
But when we're tripping, we want to catch ourselves.
Absolutely.
So fast twitch muscle fibers are very, very important for elderly. I would say even more important than for athletes. For athletes, it's a competitive gain. I get it. For elderly, it could be a question of life and death. Because the moment you trip and you break your hip, you're done.
Yeah,
it's like basically like this is the spiral down, basically.
Right.
So, yeah, there's a way to train this, and people should really care.
So this kind of dives into this next question. If you are activating 90% of muscle fibers in a EMS workout versus say 45% in lifting weights, is that progressive overload throughout the workout, or is that immediate as well? Are you hitting 90% of the muscle fibers immediately?
You're not hitting them immediately, but what's happening is you're rotating basically, especially at the beginning of a workout when you have lower intensities, you're rotating through the fibers. So you have your voluntary contraction, and the others are coming on top of it.
Okay.
So, but which fibers are being fired at a time? Like that changes during the whole piece.
Right.
So what's basically happening, because you're always firing more than you voluntarily can, you basically over time get there. But then at the end, when you have a full-on impulse on top of your own thing, like you feel this is much stronger than you would ever be able to do this on your own.
Right, absolutely.
And we're running a little bit against time here, and maybe like the next time we do a deeper dive here. But the big benefit is really you can progressively overload your muscle more than you voluntarily could do without an external load and without an injury, basically. So if you're flexing on your own, you can't injure yourself. It's always you're tripping, you're falling, you have an external load, you have something like that's falling on you where you get injured from.
Right. I guess let's save the rest of this for next time. It was phenomenal to sit down with you. This is, obviously there's so many topics that we've already been over that I would love to deep dive on. One of the things I would love to do is being able to go over the suit for elderly.
Yes.
And then also, what can a 20-year-old expect? What can 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, expectations for muscle gain, expectations for strength building, expectations for, pain relief. Obviously, fat loss is kind of off the table a little bit now. I mean,
fat loss is not off the table. It's just not
residual.
Yes, right? It's just explain. And to very quickly sneak peek into this topic, I would say age is just a number in this day.
Okay.
You can be in very bad shape when you're 20, and you can be in great shape when you're 60, 70.
Okay.
I'm 47 now,
right.
and I sometimes find time to go to my jiu-jitsu gym, which I started a while ago, and I'm rolling with the mid-20s, and they're, it's not clear who's winning.
Right.
Right. It's not an age question. It's a, how do you treat your body? It's the vessel that your soul and mind is in.
Right.
And it's the only one we have. I mean, so far.
Right.
There might be a reset. We're not quite sure about that.
Right.
But come on, like maybe there's a reset. Right. But until then, it's the only one we have.
Right.
And we should take good care of it.
Right. And being able to, I did see a study that, skeletal muscle mass is correlative with
everything,
quality of life, longevity, all
Absolutely.
of that. And
even your immune system.
Right.
Peter Attia is basically just doing a grip strength training, and it says it's the strongest predictor of your longevity.
Interesting.
So his entry test is a hang. How long can you suspend your own weight? And he said tells you like where you are.
Right. Yeah, and that's right. I've seen quite a few studies and this is something that I want to dive with you deep, because I've been researching a lot into bodybuilding, because as far as, hypertrophy and joint stress and diet, and, obviously these guys do it religiously for long periods of time. So I'm
lots of discipline.
Right.
Incredible discipline.
Right. And that's where, my question about muscle building, as far as, obviously you can add, all other things being equal, you can add more, muscle in your 20s than say you could in your 50s or 60s.
There's metabolic aspects whatsoever. We can definitely dive into all of them. Yeah.
Well, awesome.
Thanks, awesome.
It was amazing.
Wonderful.
I hope we can do this again very soon, actually.
Very cool. Let's do that.
Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Take care.
Appreciate it.
Bye.